right, Dr. Ben Carson raising $23 million over the last 3 months. He's falling in the polls after briefly holding the top spot in early November. So now he's planning a reboot.
There will be some changes made so that the campaign is more consistent with me, with the way that I am, which is not, confrontational and attacking other people, but who does put out the truth and is transparent and is reasonable to people.
And meanwhile, a major shift for the Bush campaign, canceling several $1 million in TV ads to focus efforts on his ground game in the early voting states. Here's a look at the Real Clear Politics polling average nationally. Trump holding a 17-point lead over his closest rival. Kevin McCullough is a talk show host for Salem Media Group and a columnist for townhall.com. And Marjorie Clifton is a former consultant to the Obama campaign and a principal of Clifton Consulting. Thank you both for being with us. A lot to get here. Kevin, let's start, though, with the Ben Carson campaign. Speaking to Fox last night, saying that there are changes coming to his campaign that are more consistent with the way that he is. Obviously, he's making money still, but would he be saying this if things were going well?
Not at all, and I think these are both campaigns that are really, despite what their pocketbooks look like, I think both of these campaigns are basically on the ropes. You've got a very simple equation in the GOP. Democrats are different. It's a little more complicated on their side of the ledger, but for the GOP, it's the first one to win 2 of 3. Typically, it's the Iowa winner versus the New Hampshire winner go into a bloodbath war in South Carolina, and whoever grabs it, generally, 100% of the time, has become the nominee. Now, we might see a shuffling of the deck. You might have a Bush campaign or a Rubio campaign break through in Florida if they don't win Iowa or New Hampshire. But right now, it looks like, if you just study the specifics of what the states kind of typically do in terms of organization is more important in Iowa, media is more important in New Hampshire. It looks like Cruz is going to sail to victory in Iowa. It looks like in New Hampshire you're going to have a Trump or a Christie or a more establishment type if Trump doesn't take it. That's going to go to a really strong battle in South Carolina. By the time you get to Florida in the later stage, which is now what the Rubio campaign's talking about, I just think it's too late.
I mean, and Marjorie, the Bush donors and supporters, they've got to be stunned at this point. I mean, we're a month out from the first primary in Iowa, and he is far from where he thought he would be, far from where he wants to be. He's also making changes to his campaign, cutting $2 million in South Carolina and $1 million in Iowa in the ad spending. Is this a public signal that this is potentially the beginning of the end for Jeb Bush?
Well, I think it's kind of his Hail Mary, and you look at how Carson and Bush are trying to position themselves, and it's basically the opposite of Trump. It's the authenticity, it's the heartfelt, it's the no-name calling, it's just the straight politics, and I think their style is very reflective of, we're going to try to differentiate ourselves as dramatically as we can, and with Bush, you're actually seeing him lean on the legacy of his family, and you're seeing him talk about in Iowa and spending more time on the ground in front of people and appealing to those who supported his father and his brother before him. And so absolutely, I think there is a signal that it's this or it's no game at all, and thinking a different strategy altogether is the only chance that they have if you look at the polls.
We showed you guys nationally the Real Clear Politics averages. And Kevin, I want to pull up the one in Iowa. I mean, you see Carson and Bush hanging around, 4 and 5 there. You also look at New Hampshire. I mean, these are the states that really matter in the next few weeks, still around the similar place there. I mean, could you see a situation where either one of them could potentially be the comeback kid, or do you see them staying right there?
Well, look, the definition of politics is that it's the art of the possible, right? I mean, that's really what it's all about. But at the end of the day, there's also trends, and there's also organization, and there's also ground games that you have to put into place. And I think that when you look at the money that Trump has at his disposal, and you look at the power he has in the polls already, which is basically an unlimited check because he's self-funding. When you look at how good Cruz has done in being strategic and not trying to offend other candidates per se, but has spent very little money and has raised a boatload of it. I think he has now raised more than Bush has. You're talking about 2 guys that are way ahead of everybody else, and 2 guys that have fairly serious strategies working for their advantage.
Yeah, and Marjorie, as Kevin's saying, money matters here. If you're Jeb Bush and you don't win Iowa, you don't win New Hampshire, you don't win South Carolina, how far can you go? At what point do you have to get out?
Well, and I think this is actually, as Kevin said, it's about what are the possibilities. You look back to 2008, how Obama ran his campaign in a very, digitally focused and small incremental fundraising. I think that is maybe what they're trying out. I mean, you look at Bush, he made his announcement on Snapchat and is using Instagram to communicate as a digital strategy. And so I think, again, it's sort of throwing things against the wall to see what sticks and hope that there might be a possibility, another entry point. And I think they've moved away from media in some ways because the media has become its own game and, frankly, turning off some voters. So a ground game for both of them might be the way to go.
Well, and in Iowa, media's never mattered anyway. I mean, it's who you can get physically into the chair of that high school gym on caucus night in the middle of cold February.
And they see, they've seen what Donald Trump has done. He's sort of upended everything. Kevin, Marjorie, thank you for being with us, and Happy New Year's Eve to you.
Happy New Year to both of you.
Happy New Year.